When people picture France, they often imagine Paris, vineyards, or lavender fields in Provence. But hidden beyond the culture and cuisine is a side of France that most visitors never expect. Its skies and forests are alive with some of the strangest birds in Europe. Did you know that France is home to owls so pale they were once thought to be ghosts? Or tiny birds that can twist their necks like snakes to scare away enemies? Along its coast, there are waders that flip stones with their beaks just to find food, and high in the mountains, swifts that can spend months in the air without ever landing. These creatures sound almost unreal, yet they thrive right here in France. Each bird we'll meet has a quirk that makes it bizarre, beautiful, or both. Some dance at dawn, others drum through the forest with powerful beaks, and one is so fast it can outpace a race car in a dive. Imagine walking through the French countryside and hearing a call so strange, you're not even sure it came from a bird. Would you stop and wonder, or keep walking a little faster? Let's begin with a creature of the night whose haunting face and silent flight have inspired myths for centuries, the barn owl. Have you ever walked through a quiet French village at night and thought you saw a ghost floating across the sky? More often than not, it's not a ghost at all. It's the barn owl, one of the most hauntingly beautiful birds in Europe. The barn owl is unforgettable. Its face is a pale, heart-shaped mask framed by golden buff feathers, and its dark eyes look like deep pools of mystery. Add to that its silent flight, and it's no wonder people in France once believed these birds were omens or spirits. Instead of the deep "hoo" you might expect from an owl, the barn owl lets out a piercing, almost human-like screech. Imagine hearing that echo from an old church tower at midnight. No surprise medieval villagers whispered about curses and ghosts. But behind the eerie reputation lies a hard-working partner of farmers. Barn owls are incredible hunters, able to catch mice and voles in total darkness. A single family can eat several thousand rodents in a year, saving crops and grain stores. In rural France, many farmers quietly welcome their ghostly neighbors, knowing they're the best pest control around. Here's a fun fact. Barn owls have asymmetrical ears. One is slightly higher than the other. This unusual design lets them triangulate sound with incredible precision, pinpointing prey rustling under leaves or even under snow. It's like having a built-in GPS powered entirely by sound. Their adaptability also explains why they're so widespread. From Normandy's farmlands to Provence's vineyards, barn owls have made themselves at home in barns, church steeples, and abandoned stone houses. And yet, despite their closeness to people, they still feel like creatures of myth every time they appear. Picture yourself walking under a bright French moon, fields stretching out around you, when suddenly a pale figure glides just above your head. Silent, effortless, it vanishes into the night with only a faint screech left behind. Would you shiver at the sound or smile, knowing you've just shared a moment with one of France's most iconic night hunters? From this ghost of the barns, we move to a much smaller bird with a trick so strange, it feels almost supernatural. Let's meet the Eurasian Wryneck, a little woodpecker that can twist its neck like a snake. What would you think if a bird turned its head almost all the way around and hissed at you like a snake? Strange as it sounds, that's exactly what the Eurasian Wryneck does. A tiny bird with one of the weirdest defense tricks in France. At first glance, the Wryneck doesn't look unusual at all. Its feathers are a mix of browns and grays, patterned to mimic tree bark so well that it can vanish against a branch. You might walk right past one without noticing. But when threatened, this small bird performs a show unlike any other. It stretches its neck, twists its head in eerie, jerky motions, and hisses. The effect is so uncanny that predators, and sometimes people, back away in surprise. Unlike most of its woodpecker relatives, the Wryneck doesn't hammer on trees. Instead, it has evolved a long, sticky tongue that it uses to raid ant colonies, lapping up larvae and worker ants with astonishing speed. If you've ever watched an anteater feed, imagine the same thing in miniature. Here's a fun fact. The Wryneck's genus name, Jynx, is the origin of the word Jynx. In ancient Europe, people believed this bird carried magical powers. Some even used it in rituals, convinced its strange twisting movements could cast spells. No wonder it still feels like a creature from folklore. In France, wrynecks are often found in orchards, olive groves, and open woodlands. They migrate here in spring, raising their young in abandoned woodpecker holes or crevices. Then, when autumn comes, they vanish to Africa, leaving behind only their eerie reputation. Picture yourself walking through a French orchard on a sunny afternoon. You spot a small bird clinging to a tree trunk when suddenly it begins twisting its head in unsettling spirals, hissing softly. Would you step closer to watch or take a step back, wondering if you'd just been jinxed? From this uncanny little performer, we move to the wide open fields of France, where another bird takes the stage with a display that is less creepy but just as strange, the hopping and popping dance of the Little Bustard. What if I told you that one of France's strangest birds isn't colorful or ghostly, but instead known for a sound that's been compared to a hiccup? Meet the Little Bustard, a grassland bird whose courtship display is as odd as it is entertaining. The Little Bustard is a medium-sized bird, mottled brown with a white belly, and in breeding males, a striking black and white collar around the neck. From a distance, it blends almost perfectly into dry meadows and farmlands. But during spring, the males suddenly come alive. They puff out their necks, stand tall, and let out a sharp pert call, like someone stifling a sneeze. Sometimes they even hop into the air as they call, turning the field into a stage for one of nature's quirkiest performances. In France, little bustards are mostly found in the south, especially in the open fields of Languedoc and Poitou-Charentes. These areas are among their last strongholds in Western Europe, since modern farming has reduced the wide, wild meadows they depend on. Watching one of these rare displays is like witnessing a tradition passed down through centuries. Here's a fun fact. Unlike many other male birds, little bustards don't sing elaborate songs or show off bright feathers. Instead, their strange popping calls and little jumps are all they need to impress females. It may seem simple to us, but in the bird world, it works. Imagine standing in a quiet French field at dusk. The sun is low, the air is still, and suddenly you hear a sharp pert, followed by a tiny hop from a bird half hidden in the grass. Would you laugh at its oddness or lean in, hoping to catch the next performance? From this eccentric dancer of the grasslands, we now turn to something smaller and far more delicate. A warbler whose song drifts across Mediterranean scrublands, filling the air with music. Let's meet the Subalpine warbler. Have you ever heard a song so delicate it seemed to float on the air, like perfume from a flower? That's the magic of the Subalpine warbler, one of France's most charming but little-known singers. The Subalpine warbler is small and inconspicuous at first glance, just a tiny ball of feathers flitting through Mediterranean scrub. But a closer look reveals its subtle beauty. Males wear a soft gray back, a reddish chest, and bright white around the throat and eyes. It's not flashy like a parrot, but elegant, like a well-tailored suit. And then comes the voice. Its song is a rapid, musical warble, delivered with energy and sweetness that can stop you in your tracks during a spring walk in Provence or Corsica. In France, this bird favors dry, shrubby landscapes along the Mediterranean coast, where vineyards, olive groves, and garrigue scrub provide the perfect stage. Birdwatchers know that you rarely see it first, you hear it. The song carries over hillsides, turning an otherwise quiet landscape into a living concert hall. Here's a fun fact. Unlike many small songbirds that migrate short distances, the Subalpine warbler travels all the way to Africa for the winter. That means the same bird you hear singing in Provence may spend the colder months in the savannas of West Africa, making it a true globetrotter in miniature. Imagine sitting on a warm hillside in southern France, cicadas buzzing, when suddenly a tiny gray bird hops up onto a twig and lets out a cascade of notes. Would you close your eyes to savor the music or chase it with binoculars, hoping to spot the performer? From this delicate singer of the South, we now shift to a bird that looks far more familiar, but hides a quieter, overlooked story. Its cousin in the pigeon family, the stock dove. When most people think of doves or pigeons in France, they picture the flocks filling city squares or circling church towers. But hidden away in forests and quiet farmland is a species far less familiar, the stock dove. Subtle, secretive, and surprisingly beautiful, it's the understated cousin in the dove family. At first glance, the stock dove doesn't demand attention. Its plumage is soft bluish-gray, with a gentle sheen of green and pink around the neck. Unlike its more flamboyant cousin, the rock dove, it lacks flashy markings or bright patches. But in the right light, the stock dove glows with quiet elegance, as though it were wearing a silk scarf. In France, these doves prefer woodlands, farmland edges, and old trees where they nest in cavities. Unlike many pigeons that build flimsy twig nests, the stock dove chooses hollows, often in ancient oaks or even old stone barns. This reliance on natural cavities makes them indicators of healthy, mature landscapes. A reminder of how important old trees are for wildlife. Here's a fun fact. Despite their shy nature, stock doves have a surprisingly loud and distinctive call, a deep, repeated hoo-ah, hoo-ah. If you walk through a French woodland and hear that echo, you might think it's a distant owl, only to realize it's this modest dove projecting from the treetops. They may look gentle, but they're strong flyers. Watching a flock wheel across a sunset field can be unexpectedly moving. In some parts of France, they form mixed flocks with wood pigeons, though their smaller size and softer tones make them easy to pick out for a careful observer. Imagine strolling through a quiet French forest at dusk. You hear a soft but insistent call echoing through the trees, and then a flash of bluish-gray wings sweeps overhead. Would you stop to admire a bird so often overlooked? Or walk on, never realizing how rare that moment was? From this modest dove of the forests, we now turn to a bird that thrives in wetlands and marshes, carrying a black hood and a clear voice across the reeds, the reed bunting. Have you ever walked along a marsh in France and heard a song so sharp and sweet that it seemed to rise right out of the reeds? That's often the voice of the reed bunting, a small bird with a surprising presence. The male reed bunting is easy to recognize once you see it. A striking black head, white collar, and a streaked brown body that helps it blend into its marshy surroundings. The females are plainer, more camouflaged, but equally at home slipping between the reeds. These birds may be small, but their song carries a repeated simple phrase that cuts through the stillness of a wetland at dawn. In France, reed buntings thrive in wetlands, marshes, and the edges of rivers and lakes. They build their nests low among reeds and grasses, hidden away from predators. Their reliance on wetlands makes them vulnerable when these habitats are drained or degraded, but also makes them symbols of the fragile beauty of France's marshes. Here's a fun fact. During the harsh winter months, reed buntings often gather in flocks with other seed-eating birds. They can survive bitter cold by scratching through snow to find grass seeds, proving that toughness sometimes comes in the smallest packages. Though not as flashy as a bee-eater or as dramatic as a falcon, the reed bunting has its own quiet charm. For many French birdwatchers, hearing its song is a sign of spring returning, just as much as the blooming of wildflowers or the buzzing of bees. Imagine standing on the edge of a French marsh at sunrise. Mist drifts across the water, and a small black-headed bird perches on a reed stem, singing as if it owned the world. Would you stop to appreciate its quiet beauty, or keep walking, waiting for something bigger to catch your eye? From this understated songster of the wetlands, we move to a bird that's just as small, but far more energetic, a nimble insect hunter that seems to bounce through the air. Next up is the pied flycatcher. Have you ever seen a bird so quick and restless that it seems to bounce through the air like a rubber ball? That's the pied flycatcher, one of France's most energetic little insect hunters. The pied flycatcher is small but sharply dressed. Males wear a crisp black and white outfit, black back, white belly, and a neat white patch on the wings. Females are subtler in shades of brown and gray, but no less graceful. Despite their modest size, they command attention with their constant movement, perching, darting out to catch insects mid-flight, then zipping back to their perch again. In France, they arrive in spring from Africa, filling woodlands and gardens with their flitting energy. They prefer deciduous forests, often nesting in cavities in old trees or in nest boxes provided by bird lovers. Their cheerful presence makes them favorites among birdwatchers who know that spotting one is a sure sign that summer's on the way. Here's a fun fact. Male pied flycatchers are surprisingly choosy when it comes to housing. They'll inspect multiple cavities, even decorating them with bits of moss or leaves to impress females with their real estate options. Some males even attempt to attract more than one mate by setting up several nests, though this strategy doesn't always end well. The song of the pied flycatcher is fast and lively, a jumble of trills and whistles delivered with enthusiasm. It's not as melodious as a nightingale, but it carries a youthful energy that fits the bird's restless personality. Imagine yourself standing in a French woodland in late spring. A tiny black and white bird darts out from a branch, snaps a fly out of the air with perfect timing, then zips back to its perch as if nothing happened. Would you marvel at its precision or laugh at its non-stop jittery pace? From this tiny acrobat of the forest, we move to another small bird, one that's far more familiar, yet carries an outsized place in European hearts. Next up is the friendly face of France's gardens, the European robin. What bird could possibly be both a garden favorite and secretly one of the feistiest little fighters in France? The answer is the European robin, a bird that may look cute and friendly but has a hidden edge. The robin is instantly recognizable, a round body, big dark eyes, and of course that bright orange-red breast. In France, you'll see them almost everywhere, hopping across gardens, perched on fence posts, or singing from hedgerows. Their song is sweet and liquid, often heard even in the middle of winter, which makes them seem cheerful companions through the coldest months. But here's the surprise. Behind the innocent look is a fiercely territorial bird. Male robins will defend their patch of land with intense determination, chasing away rivals, sometimes even fighting to the death. That bright red breast, it's not just decoration, it's a warning flag, a badge of ownership. In fact, ornithologists have found that robins will sometimes attack red objects placed in their territory, mistaking them for intruders. Here's a fun fact. In folklore across Europe, the robin has been seen as a messenger between the human and the divine. In France, its red breast was once said to be stained by fire as it tried to bring warmth to humans. Perhaps that's why people often feel such a strong emotional bond with this tiny bird. Despite their toughness, robins are also remarkably tame around humans. Gardeners in France often find them hopping close by, waiting for the soil to be turned so they can snatch up worms. It feels almost like having a little helper with feathers. Picture yourself walking through a quiet French garden in early spring. A robin perches just a few feet away, singing confidently, its orange chest glowing in the sunlight. Would you see it as a symbol of peace, or respect it as one of nature's smallest warriors? From this garden companion, we now take to the skies with a bird that seems to defy gravity itself, spending nearly its whole life in flight, the Alpine swift. What if I told you there's a bird in France that can stay in the air for months without landing? It sounds impossible, but that's exactly what the Alpine swift can do. With long, scythe-shaped wings and a sleek white belly contrasting with a dark brown back, the Alpine swift is built for life on the wing. These birds are larger than the more familiar common swift, and when they slice through the French skies, especially above the Alps or Pyrenees, they look like arrows shot from a giant bow. Their secret is stamina. Alpine swifts have been recorded flying for over 200 days straight, eating, drinking, even sleeping while airborne. Scientists studying them with tiny trackers were astonished to find that they barely touch the ground outside of the breeding season. Imagine that. A bird that treats the sky not as a path, but as its true home. In France, you'll find them nesting in colonies on cliffs or tall buildings, where their high-pitched screams echo through the valleys and towns. For locals, the arrival of Alpine swifts in spring is as much a sign of the season as blooming wildflowers. Here's a fun fact. Alpine swifts can reach speeds of nearly 70 miles per hour in level flight, making them not only marathoners of the sky, but also some of its fastest travelers. Watching a group swoop and wheel together is like watching a perfectly choreographed aerial ballet. Imagine standing in a French mountain town, looking up to see a cloudless sky suddenly filled with dark shapes darting and twisting. their cries carrying in the warm air. Would you marvel at their skill or wonder how it feels to never truly touch the earth? From these tireless flyers of the high skies, we now turn to a bird of the coast, a small wader with a habit so strange it flips the shoreline upside down. Next up is the Ruddy Turnstone. Have you ever seen a bird that makes a living by flipping the beach upside down? That's exactly what the Ruddy Turnstone does, and it might be one of the strangest foraging behaviors in France's coastal bird life. The Ruddy Turnstone is a compact wader with bright orange legs and striking black and white plumage, splashed with chestnut tones during the breeding season. On first sight, it looks tidy, almost dapper, but then you watch it work and the comedy begins. These birds rush along rocky shores and sandy beaches, using their wedge-shaped bills to flip pebbles, shells, and seaweed in search of insects, crustaceans, and other morsels. Watching a group of them busily turning stones is like seeing nature's cleanup crew at work. In France, they're most often seen along the Atlantic coast and Mediterranean shores during migration. They don't breed here, but their stopovers bring flashes of energy to the shoreline. For birdwatchers, spotting one among gulls and sandpipers is always a delight, especially when you catch them mid-flip. Here's a fun fact. Ruddy turnstones are known for their teamwork. Sometimes they forage side by side, methodically working through a stretch of beach together. And despite their comical feeding style, they're also remarkable travelers, migrating thousands of miles between Arctic breeding grounds and wintering sites as far as Africa. Their behavior has even inspired folklore. In some fishing villages, their stone-turning habits were thought to bring luck, as if they were unearthing hidden treasures from the sea. Picture yourself walking along a quiet French coastline at low tide. You spot a little bird scurrying ahead, then suddenly it flips a shell, grabs something, and dashes off again on its orange legs. Would you laugh at its antics or stop to admire the persistence behind the performance? From these quirky stone flippers of the shore, we now turn inland to a bird with a darker, almost Gothic presence, the great cormorant, a master diver that some have called the black ghost of the waters. What would you think if you saw a dark, almost dragon-like bird rise dripping from the water, wings outstretched as if casting a spell? That's the great cormorant, one of France's most dramatic and misunderstood waterbirds. The great cormorant is large, sleek, and almost Gothic in appearance. Its glossy black feathers shimmer with green or bronze in the sunlight, and its sharp, hooked beak hints at its skill as a hunter. In flight, it looks powerful, but a little prehistoric, like a relic from another age. Along rivers, lakes, and coasts of France, their sudden dives and shadowy silhouettes are unmistakable. What makes them fascinating is how they fish. Unlike ducks, which float on the surface, cormorants dive deep, propelling themselves underwater with strong kicks of their webbed feet. They can stay submerged for over a minute, chasing fish with remarkable speed and precision. Watching one vanish below the surface, only to reappear yards away with a wriggling catch, is like seeing an underwater assassin at work. Here's a fun fact. Unlike many water birds, cormorants don't have fully waterproof feathers. That's why you often see them perched with wings spread wide, drying themselves in the sun. To humans, it looks like a grand, almost theatrical gesture. But for the bird, it's simply practical. Despite their skill, cormorants have often been controversial. Fishermen once saw them as rivals, believing they stole too many fish from rivers and ponds. In some parts of France, they were even persecuted. Yet scientists now recognize their crucial role in aquatic ecosystems, helping regulate fish populations and indicating water quality. Imagine standing by a French estuary at dawn. The mist hangs low, the water is still, and then a dark figure bursts from below, a silver fish glinting in its beak. It climbs onto a post, spreads its wings wide, and suddenly looks less like a bird and more like a mythical guardian of the waters. Would you see it as menacing or magnificent? From this black-cloaked diver of rivers and coasts, we now move back into the forest where a much louder character awaits. A woodpecker so large and powerful, its drumming echoes like a hammer in the woods. Next up is the black woodpecker. What bird could possibly sound like a carpenter hammering inside the forest? Meet the black woodpecker, a giant among Europe's woodpeckers, and one of the most dramatic voices in France's woodlands. The black woodpecker is striking in every sense. Jet black plumage covers its large frame, broken only by a vivid red crown. Bright red on males, smaller patches on females. With a body nearly the size of a crow, it's hard to miss when it bursts from tree to tree, wings flashing through the forest shadows. But it's the sound that gives it away. The black woodpecker hammers into trees with a force that echoes for hundreds of meters. These drumming sessions aren't just for feeding, they're also a way to communicate, to mark territory, and even to attract mates. Imagine walking through a quiet French woodland and suddenly hearing rapid-fire knocks echoing through the trees. It feels almost supernatural. Their diet is unusual too. Instead of just picking at insects, they specialize in ants and wood-boring beetle larvae. With their powerful bills and long, sticky tongues, they pry open bark and carve out deep holes, sometimes leaving behind cavities so large they become future homes for owls, bats, or even other birds. Here's a fun fact. Because of their size and strength, black woodpeckers are often called the forest engineers. The holes they leave behind are crucial for biodiversity, making them keystone species in many of France's forests. In fact, some scientists joke that without them, whole neighborhoods of animals would be left homeless. Watching one is a thrill. They climb trees with bold, deliberate movements, then suddenly hammer away with astonishing energy. For bird watchers, spotting a black woodpecker feels like meeting the hidden giant of the woods. So let me ask you, if you were deep in a French forest and heard that booming drumming from above, would you follow the sound to track it down? Or would you quietly wonder if you'd stumbled into something mysterious? From this noisy architect of the forest, we now step into open skies to meet a bird that moves with grace and mystery, gliding in elegant formations during one of nature's grandest migrations, the common crane. What bird could fill the skies of France with such sound and spectacle that entire towns come outside just to watch? That's the common crane, one of Europe's greatest migratory wonders. Tall and elegant, with long legs, a slender neck, and a gray body touched with black and white. The common crane is a bird built for both beauty and endurance. In flight, their wide wings carry them effortlessly, often in graceful V-shaped formations that stretch across the horizon. But it's not just the sight that amazes, it's the sound. Their calls are loud, trumpeting cries that roll over the landscape like a chorus of ancient horns. Each autumn, tens of thousands of cranes pass through France, especially over Champagne and Alsace, on their way to Spain and North Africa. Then, in spring, they return. People gather on ridges and fields to watch the migration, treating it like a festival in the sky. It's one of the rare bird spectacles that even non-bird watchers can't help but admire. Here's a fun fact. Common cranes aren't just graceful flyers, they're also dancers. During courtship, they leap, bow, and toss their heads back, flapping their wings in a performance that looks like a choreographed ballet. These dances strengthen bonds between pairs and are sometimes copied by young birds practicing for their future. But cranes are also deeply symbolic. In French folklore, their migrations were seen as signs of the changing seasons, and their haunting calls often inspired poetry. Standing under a sky filled with cranes, it's easy to understand why. They stir something ancient and timeless inside us. Picture yourself in rural France on a crisp autumn evening. Suddenly you hear trumpets overhead, and you look up to see hundreds of silhouettes gliding across a pink sky. Would you simply watch in silence, awestruck, or raise your hands to wave, as if to greet travelers on a journey older than memory? From these great travelers of the skies, we now shift to a hunter built for speed and power. A bird so fast it's been called the fastest creature on Earth. Next up is the Peregrine Falcon. What if I told you the fastest animal on the entire planet isn't a cheetah, but a bird you can see soaring over the cities and cliffs of France? Meet the Peregrine Falcon, a predator so fast it leaves even race cars in the dust. The peregrine is sleek and powerful, with blue-gray plumage, a barred chest, and a sharp black mustache mark across its face. Its appearance is striking, but what truly sets it apart is how it hunts. High above the ground, a peregrine spots a pigeon or duck. tucks in its wings, and plummets in a breathtaking dive. These dives, called stoops, can reach speeds over 200 miles per hour. For a moment, the falcon becomes a living missile, striking prey with astonishing precision. In France, peregrines have adapted to both wild and urban landscapes. You might see them nesting on coastal cliffs in Brittany or Normandy, but you can also find them in cities, raising chicks on cathedrals and skyscrapers. To see one swoop between buildings is to witness nature's speedmaster in the modern world. Here's a fun fact. During the Middle Ages, peregrines were prized in falconry by European nobility. Kings and knights valued them as symbols of strength and swiftness. Even today, their reputation inspires awe among birders and scientists alike. Despite their strength, peregrines almost vanished in the 20th century, poisoned by pesticides like DDT. France, like much of Europe, saw populations plummet, but after bans and conservation efforts, they've staged an incredible comeback. Now their wild cries once again echo across cliffs and cathedrals. Imagine standing in Paris, looking up at a historic tower, when suddenly a blur streaks past, a peregrine falcon locking onto its prey. Would you marvel at its deadly grace, or simply blink, realizing you just witnessed the fastest strike in nature? From this sky-racing predator, we end our journey with a bird of the night, a creature of immense power and mystery, with eyes that burn like embers. Closing our list is the mighty Eurasian Eagle-Owl. What bird could possibly close our journey through France with enough power and mystery to leave a lasting impression? It has to be the Eurasian Eagle-Owl, one of the largest owls in the world, and a creature that looks like it stepped straight out of legend. Standing nearly 2 feet tall with wings that span almost 6 feet, this owl is a true giant. Its plumage is a mottled blend of browns, blacks, and creams, giving it perfect camouflage against rocky cliffs and dense forests. But nothing captures attention like its eyes, huge fiery orange orbs that glow even in dim light, staring back at you with an intensity that few animals on Earth can match. The eagle-owl rules the night. In France, it favors remote cliffs, valleys, and woodland edges, where its deep, booming calls echo across the landscape. That call can carry for miles, a sound so resonant that it's been compared to a drumbeat rolling through the dark. No wonder people once believed these owls were spirits or guardians of the mountains. Here's a fun fact. Despite their size, eagle owls are masters of stealth. Their flight feathers are designed to silence the sound of their wings, allowing them to swoop down on rabbits, ducks, or even other raptors without a whisper. Imagine a bird this big flying past you without a sound. It's equal parts awe-inspiring and eerie. Once persecuted out of fear, the eagle-owl has made a comeback in France thanks to conservation efforts. Today, spotting one is rare but unforgettable. Picture yourself in a quiet French valley at night. The stars are bright, the air is still, and then you hear it, the deep, rolling hoo-hoo of an eagle-owl. Suddenly, 2 glowing eyes blink from a rocky ledge. Would you feel a shiver of fear or a rush of wonder at standing in the presence of such a powerful night hunter? And with that guardian of the French night skies, we close our journey through 15 of the weirdest birds of France, creatures that prove nature can be bizarre, beautiful, and utterly unforgettable. And there we have it, 15 of the weirdest birds of France, from the ghostly barn owl gliding through midnight fields, to the snake-like wryneck twisting its head, the hopping Little Bustard, the tireless Alpine swift, the stone-flipping turnstone, and finally the fiery eyes of the eagle-owl. France's bird life is every bit as strange and magical as its legends. These birds remind us that France is more than vineyards, castles, and cuisine. It's also wetlands filled with song, forests echoing with woodpeckers, cliffs guarded by owls, and skies painted with migrating cranes. Each bird has its own story to tell. Stories of survival, of beauty, and sometimes of downright bizarre talents that keep nature endlessly fascinating. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and ring the bell so you won't miss our next adventure into the wild skies of the world. And here's our final question for you. Which of France's birds surprised you the most today? Was it the delicate singer, the unstoppable hunter, or the mysterious owl of the night? Tell us in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep looking up. The skies are full of wonders.